Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where you are joining us today for this public talk. On behalf of my colleagues in the committee, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to our public talk on revisiting global leadership of green leadership. I should say, revisiting global perspective of global leadership, of green leadership. This public talk is hosted by Department of International Relations, Universitas Islam Indonesia, in collaborations with Erasmus ASEAN Network for Green Entrepreneurship and Leadership, or ANGEL. This program is co-funded by the Erasmus program of the European Union. My name is Hangga Fatana, and I'm Executive Secretary of Universitas Islam Indonesia, and also assistant professor in the Department of International Relations. We are very glad that you are with us today, and we have over 200 people joining us from across Indonesia and some part of the world. We do hope that wherever you are, you and your loved one are safe and healthy. Just a word about this public talk. Over the time, there is a growing desire from many countries to play leadership role in the global fight against climate change. As we can see, not only in the state level, but also in the non-state actor, such as corporations, organizations, and the wider civil society organizations, also hand in hand in contributing to the green leadership. And today, we would like to identify the perspective of green leadership from at least 3 countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, and Cyprus. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot to discuss today, and we have very limited time, so I'll keep this very brief. Before we start the discussions, I need to inform some housekeeping informations. If you are joining us from Zoom, you have the ability to raise your questions through the chat box or also using the open microphone during the Q&A session. Each speaker will have 10 minutes to talk, and I would like to introduce you to our distinguished speakers. The first speaker will be Associate Professor Dr. Rosmini Omar, Dean of Asman Hasim International Business School, University Technology, Malaysia. Welcome, Professor Rosmini. And the second speaker will be Assistant Professor Dr. Elmos Konis from the School of Business Administration, European University, Cyprus. Welcome, Professor Elmos Konis. And the last one will be Assistant Professor Masito Nurrohma, Secretary for International Program, Department of International Relations, Universitas Islam Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, let us jump into today's public talk. The first speaker will be Associate Professor Dr. Rosmini Omar, Dean of Asman Hasim International Business Schools, University Technology, Malaysia. Hello, good afternoon, Professor Rosmini.
Hello, Assalamualaikum, good afternoon,
Waalaikumsalam
Pak
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
and
It's a
also,
pleasure and honor
definitely.
for me to be able to speak with you, Professor.
Mhm.
And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, please joining us to welcome Professor Rosmini Omar.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, Pak Hangga, for this wonderful session, joining with the rest of the green community across Indonesia and I guess several parts of the world. It's going to be a little bit different because I don't have any slides, because I think somewhere in the beginning of the Angel project, we have a session also with UII in which we describe the whole project. And it's so good again in the second year, almost, we congregate again online to discuss the same issue and see what are the developments after the first year and seeing from the angle of 3 countries. I don't have any slides, basically. What I'm going to start with today is the idea of green. Yeah, the title here is about green and global, right? Pak Hanga, it's going to be a participative
Yes.
session. Yeah, green
Yes.
and global. We're going to start first with what basically our common understanding of the color green. If we look into several, shall we say, several websites, when we talk and discuss with others, I guess in its wholesome, green is the most commonly associated with spring, all right, with newness, all right, with newness. And when it comes to spring, it's all about new life, is freshness, and green is also symbolized towards the understanding of rebirth, renewal, and immortality. Yeah, so that is, I believe, anywhere on earth, if we look at the color green, it somewhat gives us a new shades of freshness, a new tone of tranquility and peaceful. And if we look from the angle of our great leader in Islam, which is our own prophet, Nabi Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, green is one of the color that he loves, aside from white. Yeah. And that brings along where I will explain a little bit how I came up with the proposal of angel. And then we look at the word global. There's always, but Provelmos will later probably explain more about, what do we normally associate global with. So we have locals, and we have international, and we have global. Oh. And there's also a definition where sometimes in marketing class, where people call it as glocal. Yeah, glocal. So local is as per the boundary of what we normally are basically just about within our state, within our nation, and also our district. Then we move into international, the idea that we try to keep on to our values and commonalities when we go abroad. But global, when I look back at my yesteryears of becoming a student of international business, we always associate global with standardization, where there'll be less of domestic values, but we're trying hard to find more deeper commonalities between different society alongside when we are pursuing something. And sometimes, as I said earlier in marketing, there's also lecturers who came to class and came up with the term glocal, that there are some parts of our daily practices, our theory, our mental models that we bring up to a generic understanding. Yeah, but there are some parts where it has to remain contextual, and those contextual elements are the nuances that makes differences between one society to another. Coming back to green, this is where probably in some parts of the world, green is associated, yes, it is freshness, is rebirth, is immortality, etc. But there must be something unsaid or within the culture that probably is a little bit different than what we're having this mental model set in our mind about what is green. But then we come to the next thing that we're facing at the moment. We're going to talk about the pandemic, COVID-19. When we face the COVID-19, during those pandemic, when we read and when we talk and we discuss, we're saying the next normal or the near normal. But coming to this season of time whereby we're seeing that boundaries are open again across countries, I guess it's time for us to see that the next normal is already the current normal. Yeah. And therefore, how do we associate the idea of green, global, and leadership within this era of an interesting time where we call the current normal, because the next normal has become the current situation at the moment. If we look into those difficult days between in Malaysia, we're closed and we don't open to outsiders. We stayed home along the year of 2019, somewhere before middle of 2019, and then the whole of 2020, as well as back and forth. We try to open and then we close again, open and close again. That is the year 2021. But let us face the fact that China is still closing its door to others. But again, what we have experienced along those pandemic days for Malaysians is that, yes, we feel the difficulties because most of the industries closed. Many people lost their jobs. But it is also the time whereby we realize new businesses soar, and these are digital business. We come to see that, just like Air Asia, anybody can fly. During the pandemic, I guess, we can see that anybody can open the business. So they sell food, mostly food, and I guess it's food and plus also all other things, being in Shopee, Lazada, and so on and so forth. There we go, we have entrepreneurship growing. But if we look further, what we have learned during the pandemic is that we learn to live simply. I might be wrong, I might not be correct, but this is the lesson I learned during the pandemic. We learn to be more simple, of course, because we don't go to office. So just wake up in the morning, open up the desktop or a laptop, and there we go, meeting. You just do whatever, all right? Shade some lipsticks, and there we go. And things are being simple. Things are being simple because we learn another thing, that nobody knows when death is coming. I lost a few relatives of mine, younger uncles, elder uncles, and aunties from COVID-19. So we learn to live bravely and learn to live simply. And we also understand that it's not just about growing and developing the self and the community, but also ensuring life goes on, and it has to be done considering others around us. So we learn to live and grow equally. Why do I say that? In Malaysia, during those difficult times, we understand that not just anybody can become entrepreneurs, but anybody can also become philanthropists. During those difficult days, people keep giving. The digitalization makes it quicker, that we understand, okay, there's somebody somewhere is without food. and then somebody somewhere is losing families and so on and so forth. So people keep reaching out, and it is during the year of the pandemic that Malaysia is also struck by heavy flood.
Professor Rosmini, we have 1 minute left.
Okay, so we are having this heavy flood, and these are the times also people get together to support those in difficulty. So coming back to the idea of green, it is not about the green leaves, and it is not about the color of and the shades of our dresses to be has to be green. It's about the heart. It's about the mentality that come whatever may, we should not be fragile. We should go into antifragility, and there's always a way for us to path for what we call as rebirth and renewal. And definitely it is a way for us to also understand we cannot do it alone. So it has to be a co-green effect and co-green effort across the world. Just a little bit more, 1 minute, Angel is thrown into the scenario of partner universities because I fully understand entrepreneurship is all over, as what I've explained just now. Anybody can open a business and so on and so forth. But it is also a fact that, at one side, everybody has, almost every university has university entrepreneurship lab. But how many of those universities out there having an entrepreneurship lab are strong enough, are mindful enough to inject essences of leadership into the aspect of teaching and learning entrepreneurship with their students? Because I think entrepreneurship and leadership should be collapsed, gummed, and cohesively joined together. It is from one unit of a person, a student, or a staff in any university, and from that we grow, because then we can go into the idea of what I said just now, a co-green effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Rosmini Omar, for such inspiring speech, and also the points that you emphasize about the fact green is not about what we wear, but what's in our heart. And it relates also to your points about the fact that green leadership today address about the issue on globalization and also at the local level, which turns into the terminology of glocalization. I think we have so many things to be discussed after this, but before we continue to Professor Elmos Konis, I would like also to extend my warm welcome to Dr. Arvis Madi, the project manager of Angel in Universitas Islam Indonesia. Welcome, Pak Arif. Thank you very much for joining us and taking the time out from your busy schedule to attend this webinar. Thank you. And I would like to next invite the Assistant Professor Elmos Konis to deliver the talk about green leadership from the perspective of Cyprus. And it seems to me that Professor Elmos Konis will address about the leadership trends, leadership of green organizations, and some related issues about that. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Elmos Konis.
Thank you very much, everyone. When I was over in Malaysia just about a week or so ago, I was very lucky to pick up some very good friends, but I also picked up something else in Malaysia, some kind of a cold. I've been testing myself, and it looks like you guys didn't give me the gift of the COVID as well. So please forgive me if once in a while I have to cough, because I think it's just a cold. It's always negative. I've been testing for a few days. Thank you for the invitation, Hanga. and UII. And also thank you for putting such a nice picture of me. It's only from last year, but it looks maybe even better than that. What I will do is I will share some slides where I talk about how leadership is changing globally, and then I will try to match it with what literature says and what our knowledge says regarding green leadership. So let me try and share my screen here first, if I can. We got it right before. Let me see. Zoom. Okay. I don't use Zoom very much, so please forgive me.
Not a problem.
I'm trying to find the button for sharing here, which we had a few minutes ago. Are you getting my screen now?
Yes, and it would be great if we can have it on full screen.
Okay, let me try and do that, if I may. Is it full screen now?
Great, thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay, so let us begin. I will try to be as quick as possible because I know time is limited. We have to face up with some realities on the general subject of leadership, and that is that leadership is in general crisis around the world. Here in Cyprus, we have elections coming up real soon, and nobody wants anyone. In England, they keep changing their prime ministers. In organizations, the situation is even worse. This is the lowest percentage I could find on leadership satisfaction. You know something interesting? We don't leave our jobs, we leave our bosses. It's that important. So yes, there is a leadership crisis today because we don't want what is being served to us. And even though this subject of leadership has been studied since ancient times, right here I have the oldest book ever written, which is 5,500 years old, not this book itself. This book itself is still a bit old, it's 120 years old. It's called the Instruction of Ta-Hotep, and it pertains to be the oldest book ever written. And what is it about? Well, in a big way, it's about leadership. Back in the time of ancient Egypt, 5,500 years ago from today. The Greeks, the Chinese masters, the modern philosophers, scientists, we have been studying leadership for so long, yet if you check on the internet, you will find 100 definitions and more. And you will also now begin to find new definitions of types of leadership that we didn't even used to talk about 3 years ago, you know, like authentic leadership and green leadership. So we have as a big challenge in talking about leadership, even though it's the most studied subject of them all in the history of subjects, you name it, physics, biology, leadership is the most studied of them all. And now it's even more challenging because the world is changing. You and I, people around the world, are becoming more educated, and this brings about something else. It brings about the desire to be heard, the desire to have a voice. And so the entire world is changing around us, where each individual is saying, please listen to me as well. I have an opinion. Hence, the past style of leadership, where it was purely top down, there was a knowledgeable person who would tell us exactly what to do, is changing a lot. And we can see it all the time. And that's why there are so many disappointed people in leaders today around the world, by the way. And there's another word coming up now, which is the word innovation. Being the traditional style of organization isn't good enough anymore. You have to keep changing, you have to keep innovating. And that's where green leadership comes up, because green leadership is about change leadership, which I'll talk about briefly in a few minutes. In the past, one person could be the organization. Everything could pass through his or her desk and things would happen. But today, a one-man organization is impossible. Hence, the modern leader needs to work with a team. He has to be a team builder. Imagine, if you will, the cacophony of somebody playing all the instruments by himself, as you see there, and a modern philharmonic orchestra. So there's various things happening. Families, even schools. I was talking to a school teacher just yesterday, and she told me about how students are voting, how students are on committees, and so on. Even our families are becoming more and more democratized, whereas before we had the patriarchic system. And I noticed that in Indonesia, there's a combination now, from research that I have seen, of the benevolent paternalistic leader, but that is combined with a new dimension, the transformational leader. I don't know if now I'm quoting one of your studies, people who are here. So look at this dimension. Is there a bridge between paternalistic leadership and transformational leadership, which inspires people to decide by themselves? My understanding is that absolutely there is, and we'll try to talk about that towards the end. If I may just go a little bit on with what I'm trying to say here as an introduction. Governments are more democratic now around the world. I know there are different systems around the world, but we expect our voice to be heard more and more. So organizations have had to pay attention to their employees. And whenever they paid attention to their employees, it was incredibly to their benefit, because it's different one person thinking everything and being the all-wise person to having 100 people with 100 different ideas. The second occasion is much, much better. Leaders love their jobs. You do research. That's what my PhD study was, and further on in Cyprus. And all the leaders told me they love their jobs. So why do they love their jobs and employees don't like their jobs? It's because leaders have freedom of choice, freedom of influence. They make decisions and they get rewards for their results that they achieve. In green business now, this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to allow the organization to give us suggestions. I don't know, how to save electricity, how to do things without using too much paper. Everybody in the organization can think up of new ideas, especially if you're the person making the copies in that room rather than the boss somewhere else. Employees today need to have freedom of choice and the ability to make decisions. It's very, very important for us to understand that. I will proceed with some magic words which I think apply to not only regular businesses, but especially to green businesses. Engagement is the magic word today. A few years ago, you know what was the magic word? It was motivation. How do we push people to do things? How do we make people work? And that was the wrong thing we were telling ourselves. How do we make people work? Well, the answer is very simple. if you involve people from the very start and you give them what's called ownership, you tell them simply, this project is your baby. Whenever my boss tells me this is your baby, I immediately work so many more hours. Engagement or ownership are magic words that we have to apply in all kinds of organizations today. Also, we need to provide people with the confidence to take risks. You will see in a further study, in a further slide, I will come to it in a minute or two because I understand the limitation in time. In order for me to start thinking about green entrepreneurship, I have to be allowed to take risks. You know who takes risks? People who are confident. People who are not confident don't take risks. You know who takes risks? People who are successful. So we should give our employees success, make them feel important and watch them fly. Happiness and hard work are these days some things that in the past we were ignoring. Hard work was what we told, what we demanded of people. And whenever you tell somebody, work hard and you will do well, you would think that they would all say, all right, I'm going to work hard because I'll do well. You know what the result is? We get scared because the human being is programmed to not work hard. Today we have studies on laziness, which are revealing so many more things about human nature. There's no time to talk about it now, but never tell somebody work hard and you will do well. Tell him first you will do well, give him or her little successes, he or she will become happy, and magically he or she will work hard. Never begin with hard work your approach to your employees. Why do we follow some people? I will be very quick with this because I would like to talk about green leadership. If you can give me 1.5 minutes. Do we follow people because they're beautiful, because they have this aura, because they speak well? The answer is no. The only reason we follow people is because they promise us success. The reason people voted for Trump in America is because they felt they were left behind and he would get them their jobs back and the pride they wanted back. The only reason we follow anybody, ladies and gents, is because of promise of success. And now I will go to my last slide. I will skip. This is my theory. Please go to YouTube and visit Goni's theory, how to succeed in everything you do, because I hope you will see how simple it is, whereas we make things so complicated. Give somebody confidence and success, and that will make them happy. Because they're happy, they will work harder. And because they work harder, their confidence and success will increase. Please look at that model, but I want to move on to the green businesses. If you can give me 1 more minute and I will be done. In our green businesses, the same is leadership, the same. Well, here, well, you can't see it, but here I have a list of studies on green leadership. It's true that there isn't very much research on green leaders, but some things, and this is what I try to get out of it, are true for green leaders, people who lead green organizations. And here they are. It's brief, it's not very much. First of all, you have to give people expertise in their field. If you're selling solar energy, send them to training seminars, send them to understand about solar energy and so on, because you want them to take the next step, which is innovation. Teach them how to be creative and give them a focus so that they know they're motivated where they are going. Green leaders do have higher values. They understand the environment they live in. And so when we talk, we should not just talk about ourselves, but talk about the environment to instill in our organization this kind of feeling. Another couple of points and I'm done. The leader leads by example. If you have to ride your bicycle, you have to think green all the time. In your meetings, tell them, how do we go greener? How do we reduce what we use? How do we recycle? And so on. A big one, mistakes are allowed because you're carving a new path. The easiest path for us to follow is what everybody else does. For me to just switch on the light, to use up the electricity here, and to do whatever everybody is doing. Please allow people to make mistakes because then they will take risks. Last but not least is that a green leader is a change agent. And you should reward people who are thinking in different ways. Hey, boss, why don't we do our exams with no paper? We had, last point, Hanga, and I'm done. We had our exams done on internet for 2 years and we're back to papers. I don't have here my exams, but if I showed you the pile, it's this big. We went back to paper. It took a whole forest for me to do my examinations or something like that. That was a brief introduction to leadership, the way that I perceive it. And I hope that some of this stuff, I know I went fast, some of this stuff was something that the audience can absorb and maybe even use in their lives. I thank you very much, and I will be here to listen to any questions or whatever.
Thank you very much, Professor Konis, for the elaborations, which inspire us to think about the fact that green leadership is not simply about the leadership and the commitment toward environment. But beyond that, through your perspective, we learned that leadership, particularly green leadership, is a leadership that involves participations, not only from the top-down approach, but also participations from the entire team members. I remember, and I take note, some magic words like engagement, ownership, success, and confidence, and it leads us into the hard work. Thank you very much for that points, and we will drill more about it later after we have the last speaker today. It seems that we don't have ample time, but still, we would like to invite Assistant Professor Masito Nurrohma, the Secretary for International Program in Department of International Relations, Universitas Islam Indonesia, to talk about the green leadership from the perspective of international relations, particularly from Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Assistant Professor Masito Nurrohma.
Thank you so much, Pak Hanga, for inviting me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, ladies and gentlemen. So we have two presenters before talking about the green leadership, and especially in the context of entrepreneurship and also in the business sectors. Now I would like to give maybe some broader perspective in the global level and in the more specific area in the Indonesia's context. So when we are talking about the leadership, I also agree with Professor Rosmini that green is something like symbolize the newness, freshness, something like peaceful and maybe new spirit of everything related to the various aspects of human lives, such as the political, cultural, social, economy, and so on and so forth. And in the context of Malaysia, there is a challenges in the green leaderships because there is a pandemic COVID-19, and also there are some disasters such as the flood. And from Professor Elmas, we know that talking about green leadership is not only about how we try correlate the organization culture and also how they work, focusing on the progress and also balancing with the environment, but also related to the democratization of the organization and in the context of inclusiveness, participation, engagement, and how the decision-making process is being made not only by the top-down approach, but also in the bottom-up approach. So I kind of very thankful about the explanation because it will address my presentation in the global context that actually we also have a global green leadership, or we call it as green initiative. Maybe if I may call or give a context in this kind of leadership in the global level. So beginning from the development process in the world, when we are reaching the in the industrial revolutions in the Europe, we know that this kind of progress is very, what do you call it, as something like a great achievement in the world, because after the industrial revolution, we make a lot of economic progress, a lot of political progress, a lot of social progress, and so on and so forth. But we never know and we never expect that this kind of progress continuing in the negative impact to the environment, such as the climate change. And to tackle this kind of climate change, we need a collective action. But collective action would not happen if there is no initiative from a leader figure in the global context or in the domestic or local context. So it is very important to highlight, if we want some progress in tackling the issues in the global level or even in the local level, we need something like actors who can boost and also support, and also maybe sponsor to be the sponsor of this kind of movement. So in the global level, actually, we have a lot of green initiative since 1980s, 1970s, 1960s also. And we also have something like progress in the international regimes that trying to make some progress in the context to balance the development of economy along with the sustainability of the environment and also social and political sectors. Some beliefs that we call it as the sustainable development. And some also believe that this sustainable development should be applied in the every sectors in our development process, in the global and also in the domestic level. So we need a government to help us to make the decision-making process along with the civil society and also the other sectors like the corporations and also the other non-state actors to formulate an inclusive and also a justice policy or fair policy. So currently we have a Paris Agreement and also conference or the party that being held in annually every year globally. So there are three main events that currently happened in the world, which we called as Conference of the Parties 26 in Glasgow, UK, and also Conference of the Parties 27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. And these two kind of summit have different targets and also result. When in Glasgow in 2021, the result is commitment to raise a fund as much as $100 billion for climate change mitigation and adaptation for the developing countries coming from the developed countries. But unfortunately, this kind of commitment is not have been met yet because the developed countries cannot achieve this kind of targets to give the fund for the climate change mitigation and adaptation for the developing countries, and they are moving to the next step, to the COP 27. And there is also a scheme to make a loss and damage fund because of the climate change. It shows that actually the Green Initiative is a sign that actually global collective action to tackle the climate change is happening, and the leadership in the context of to try to tackle the environmental issues lies in there, but the implementation, or practically how they try
Professor Masito, are you there?
We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Professor.
Yeah, Professor, I cannot hear your voice. I think there is. Okay,
I'm sorry.
great.
I think my connection is unstable for a while. So I will continue that in G20 summit, we have an energy transition agenda that is very important in the context of that. Actually, we have a fact that G20 members contribute 80% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That it is kind of a big problem because the G20 members is the biggest economy in the world, but it also contributes negatively in the environment. So it is a kind of a homework for every G20 members in this world, including Indonesia. And Indonesia is also in the 5th place of the world's top producer of global global carbon emissions. So it is also a big challenge for Indonesia to show the leadership in the green initiative in the global level and also in the national scale. But although we have some challenges and also this kind of conditions, Indonesia still have hope that actually we have some fact and also we made some progress. Indonesia, through the time between 2016 and also 2022, we increase the commitment in the context of reduction of target emission reductions, which is actually increasing from the one period to the other periods. So now we are having some strategies, something like that, to be the pioneer in the context of green leadership, to be something like an example for the developing world, and also to how we try to tackle the environmental issues along with the economic recovery plan together in the context of post-pandemic era. So actually, when we are looking back to the recovery plan from Indonesia, it is not really great because almost all of the recovery plans was dominated by social protection schemes through a subsidy on electricity for lower income households and micro, small, and medium enterprises, which is coming from dirty energy, which is the electrification in Indonesia, basically coming from the coal power plants, which is it is not healthy for the environment. But in these years, we establish the presidential election number.
Sorry, we have 30 seconds, if you don't mind.
Okay. For the acceleration of development of renewable energy and provision of electricity. And then we also have a scheme of energy transition mechanism country platform that trying to seeking a partner from international organization or the international corporations and so on and so forth, together to make the energy transition to the renewable energy happens. So I think that's all from me for the perspective of green leadership from Indonesia that can be seen from my presentation. Thank you so much. I am taking it back to Pak Hangga. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Masito Nurrohma, for the elaborations about the green leaderships. It highlights the fact that the green leadership is not only an issue in the organizations or corporations, but also in large at the global level, it also issue in the state level as well. Now, as we have limited time, I understand that some of the speakers need to leave on time. We have 3 questions already and 1 question. Sorry for my unstable connections. Can you hear my voice, everybody? Are you there?
Yes, yes, Pak Hangga.
Sorry, yeah. Let me read the questions to each speaker. First, to Professor Rosmini from Jeffrey Rahmansyah. What are the challenges in building public awareness, especially for young people in countries like Malaysia and Indonesia, in developing with demographic bonus regarding green leadership? This is question to Professor Rosmini. And the second question is from Sekar Okta to Professor Masito. Green leadership is very important for the younger generation, but national government policies continue to lag behind the concept of green leadership. Can we as young people take to participate and help foster the values of green leadership? And the last questions to Professor Elmos from Safira Taskia. If one of the ways to foster green leadership is to integrate the environmental concerns into the curriculum in schools, how will young people to move, particularly to move their team to participate and to make a movement into the happiness, as you mentioned, Professor? Now, I would like to invite Professor Rosmini to answer the questions.
Thank you, Pak Hangga, and thank you also to Mr. Jeffrey Rahmansyah from UII. I like the term demographic bonuses. That is something positive. I guess Malaysia and Indonesia experience the same, shall we say, scenario. What are the challenges in building public awareness? In one way or another, it goes back to the lifestyle and demographics of our people, because in Malaysia we have the elite and educated, all right, and then we have we call them T20, and then there's M40. T20 are the elite, educated, and well-able, the haves, and then we have the M40, the middle income earners, and then we have the B40, the lower income earners. It's a challenge in a way that when it comes to the educated, yes, they have experience, they're well-read and experienced in sense that they have traveled and see those places where green perspectives are being practiced. When we talk about green leadership, I would say we should not look at the top management of the country or the bosses, but our issue and our dream first is to achieve green leadership across our community, across age, across demographics, and also across this economic income. So that is a challenge, but I'm not saying that the B40, the lower and the middle income earners, are not exposed to green, because green is a combination of three things, I believe: E, environmental, S, social, and G, governance. So it's not just about greening the physical, but also greening, as I said, the mind and also the heart, where it goes back to socialization of the people. And then also when it comes to greening of a mind and also the heart, it will go into the next aspect where we talk about governance. So so these are the challenges, in a sense, that how to make it broaden up, and then to somehow making us reach what we call as the tipping point, where everybody appreciate the idea and the concept of green leadership. There are two ways in terms of overcoming these challenges. I wouldn't say that annihilating or eliminating it to ground zero might be difficult, because it requires an evolution. I believe in evolution rather than revolution. It can be either top down or it can be bottom up. Top down is when nations realize the importance of green leadership through the E in environment, as social, equality, belongingness, and also the G, governance. That could be developed through policy. And in Malaysia, the country is very much into ESG. So one of the top-down strategy in Malaysia is that it has become a policy where it is a great agenda for us to achieve SDG, all the 17 SDGs, particularly on green, and all companies which they have to report to the Security Commission, I think, on a yearly basis, of their ESG activities. So these include, as I said in my talk just now, about the idea of co-green. Co means they have to do it in a collaboration manner. So companies will get tax deduction, much greater grading in terms of their shares and so on and so forth, if they collaborate with universities, government, non-governmental associations, in terms of coming up with specific programs to somehow achieve their ESG. So I see this as a pattern for green leadership, because leadership is when you're able to influence. Leadership is about power, and power is about influence. So you're influencing others through specific actions and to progress. When it comes to the bottom up, I guess Malaysia and Indonesia are doing well with this because of the digitalization and so on and so forth. We have the idea of wakaf. To Elmos, wakaf is a concept whereby kind of like a sharing, a formalized kind of sharing between the organization, also the public, and it is like a foundation kind of a concept. So if each of these wakaf activities or wakaf strategy, we look at the angle of public oriented, where the grassroots support each other and come up with the focus towards supporting each other, either improving the environment, improving the society, and also the governance issue, I think we'll do well. Okay. A short one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Rosmini, for very comprehensive answers on that. Just before we continue, it's already 5:32. I wonder if Professor Rosmini and also Professor Emos still have like 5 more minutes to provide answers on this, if you don't mind. I'm sorry. We will move to next to Professor Elmos Konis about the questions how we need to move young people, particularly to build engagement, and then as what we have mentioned earlier about the ownership, success, and confidence to create happiness at work.
First of all, thank you for the questions. And I must tell you, the young people, are only hope. We are relying on you in a big way because I'm not entirely sure I agree. You said that people are becoming less concerned. I think do we have a chance? We have a chance. People, your generation, are becoming more concerned. Now, how do we go about this? Rosmini mentioned something. She said something about evolution and not revolution. And really, that's the only way that we can do it, guys. We have to do small steps each day. Each and every one of us. Can we? There was a question regarding the curriculum. I am involved in curriculum development, and I have been for a while. Can we change the entire curriculums? Well, as we saw in the Angel program as well, it's not so easy to go to any university, my university, and tell them, let's put a whole green program. Now, can I convince my colleagues with a small presentation to have one lesson on green entrepreneurship so that students can become more sensitized to that subject? I think yes. So the answer to your question regarding curriculum is that we can do it slowly but surely. Each one of us can add a little bit, because to be honest, you, the young generation, are so much better attuned to green entrepreneurship. I'll just say one more point. We have to realize that why doesn't everybody drive a Tesla? Students, why don't you drive a Tesla? You know the answer, don't you? Because a Tesla is so expensive. You have to be super rich to buy a Tesla. Those bicycles that are completely green, they're more expensive than the regular pedal bicycles that we have. What's the problem here? The problem is that we're talking about the environment in general, but we have to convince ourselves that it's more profitable for ourselves to be green. And this, I think, is where policies, the second question, came up. You have to convince people why it's good for them. You have to convince people why they will become richer in your neighborhood, in your country, in small urban or suburban areas, if they think green. Reuse, recycle, reduce are 3 tools that we can use to become better off as people. You know, recycling our clothes rather than throwing them away, and making art out of plastic spoons or whatever people are throwing away. If we start thinking, all of us, this way, I think in the end, to answer your difficult second question, government will start paying attention. Thank you for the excellent and difficult questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Konis, for the answers. And we will turn to Professor Masiton Rohma, please.
Thank you so much, Hangga, and also the participants for the question. I also agree with Professor Almos in the context of that the youth generation is the biggest hope for the transformation and also the evolution of the green leadership. And it is right that Professor Rosmini said that the green leadership is something like the evolution that we have to meet. The small steps are matters, means that we cannot rely on the dramatic changes, because we have to convince a lot of people that actually the green development, the green leadership is good for all of the people in the world, all of the entities in the world. And For the question about the young generations, what are the things that they can do about to promote and also encourage the green leadership to be implemented in the context of the global development and also in the context of local and also national level, including the participation of every aspect of the social and also political systems in countries. From the youth generation is actually, I have two recommendations. That first is to think about the long-term result, means that when we are talking about the green leadership, we will talk also about the future generations living. I mean, like the next generation futures, means that we have to think about the people after us. How can they live in this kind of world if it is changing in the context of climate change and disaster that becoming worsened from day to day. So it is important to thinking about the long-term result. And it is important for the young generations, the youth, that they will become the leader in the futures to take a risk when you are making a decision. Like Professor Elmo said that a good leader will take a risk and also have a good calculation about the decision that they being led. And the second one is don't stop the spirit at you, means that don't stop the information and you at you. Please spread the information, spread the spirit, and also spread the kindness. That's the most important things that I think we have to do as the youth generations. Spread the kindness to the other people, help the other peoples, and try to understand the position of the other peoples when they are still trying to remove their bad habits, or they are still in the progress to their pathway to the green leadership. So don't judge people, but help them to achieve the target or the common goal of to the green leadership. And maybe the last one is try to always raise your voice, express yourself in so many things, in so many activities that benefit yourself to improve your self-development through the extracurricular programs, the sport activities, maybe also in the arts, and maybe in the social media, writes a lot of things that people can maybe you can spread your thought through the words and so on and so forth. That's my recommendation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Masito Roma, for such inspiring suggestions and also encouragements to our students and young generation at large. Ladies and gentlemen, we have so many things to talk, but we have little time, unfortunately, and it's already late as well. But maybe it indicates that we need another sessions of Green Leadership Talk, maybe later in the near future. Now, we would like to close this public talk by, I would like to ask each speaker to deliver one sentence only of the closing statement, one sentence only to wrap up what have we highlighted so far. Can we start from Professor Masito? One sentence only.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe my last sentence is spread the kindness and help people to achieve the goals of or common goals in the green leadership.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Professor Elmas Konis, please.
One sentence, huh? Think like an artist.
Okay, great.
Make a vision in your mind of the future and paint the most beautiful painting you can think of.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you very much, Professor Elmas Konis. And the last one, but not least, Professor Rosmina Omar, please.
Yeah, I guess focus is the new infinity. What does it mean? Focus on the green, and the green, as I said just now, is all the goodness, all the freshness, renewal, rebirth, and we have to do it collaboratively. New friendships, like how we know Elmos and so on and so forth. It has to be, we focus on the goodness, and when we focus on goodness, goodness come back to us infinite.
Infinite goodness.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Rosmini. Ladies and gentlemen, the closing statement from each speaker marks the end of our public talk today. Thank you very much for joining us and staying us until this time. And we believe that in the near future, I believe if the time permits, we will have another webinar discussing about green leaderships in a broader context. I'm Hangga Fatana signing off from Jakarta. And with that, let's close our public talk today. It's time to zip. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Stay healthy and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.